Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my talk, Investing in Mobile Games, What Are Investors Looking For? My name is Tom Van Dam. I work for NetEase China, a very large internet corporation doing news, doing email, making a lot of money from games, e-commerce as well. We're so big we run the #1 and #2 top grossing games in China. To give you an idea of that, last year we topped the App Annie global iOS revenue chart just by being live in China. Okay, so quite a scale. We do a lot of game development, we do a lot of game publishing, we invest in mobile game studios around the world, either for strategic purposes or just to take part in the Western expansion as well. Today I want to talk to you about what it is that we're looking at when we evaluate an investment. Now there are lots of ways and lots of approaches when doing investment. There are lots of types of investors. There are the angels that were on the panel just now. There are the venture capital funds, and of course the publishers or developers themselves looking to make an investment. So there are a lot of different angles, and maybe some of the things I'm talking about today some people might disagree with, but I think that's fine. You need to get lots of different points of view in order to make an informed decision on the best type of investment for your company. Okay, so let's get started. Why invest in mobile game companies? Well, you have the strategic investments. Obviously, you're trying to get something more out of the company or the investment that you're doing beyond the monetary return. So for example, if I have a lot of games in China that I want to bring to the West, I'm investing in a Western publisher, and that publisher will help me do my business better, and I get more value on the return there. On the other hand, just the high potential for return. I'm investing in a studio, I'm looking to get more money on that investment because they did a good job building their game. And in that we have the diversified. You invest in a lot of studios at the same time, you're hoping that one or two are going to do really well, that cover all your costs, and you're doing targeted, like cherry picking. Cherry picking is the approach that NetEase does a lot, along with some strategics. So I'll try to keep it a bit general. There's a panel at 1 o'clock as well. We'll dive deeper into the strategic aspect. But first, what are investors looking for? Well, we heard a little bit just now. On one hand, the proposal, your game, has to be good in the basis. On the other hand, the team needs to be experienced. We need to have the confidence that if you have a good concept with a good game, something that the market has not seen before perhaps, that you have the ability to actually execute it and bring it to the market. So I think that most investors would say a team background takes precedence over the concept that you're presenting. And similarly, as a mobile games developer, you have to consider, why are you looking for investment? Is it just because you enjoy doing what you do? You just need money to keep the doors open, keep developing the game that you love, and without too much consideration of the global market? Or are you actually trying to make your small product big? You want to be very, very successful, but you simply don't have the resources to get there. This is a motivation issue, and you have to consider it clearly. A lot of studios just come to me saying, I have a great little project. Do you think we can get investment? But they haven't considered at all going global or making it big. They just love what they do and they want to keep doing it. But that to an investor is not going to make any money. So investors looking for developers motivated by money, motivated by passion. Of course you need a developer that's passionate about his product. If they're not passionate about their product, they're probably not going to iterate very well. They're not going to put in long hours to make it great. On the other hand, if they're only passionate and not have that financial sense, they're not going to make much money in the end. You have to care about the commercial aspect as well. And at NetEase we get hundreds of submissions or proposals for investment. And it's surprising how many developers are not at all considering the making money aspect. They just push how great their game is. And they have given very little thought to how it's actually going to make the investor more money. So both are very important. It's the combination that is essential. You have to present that good concept and you have to give the right motivation with the right team. So let's look a little bit at the product that you are proposing. It should make financial sense. If you're coming to us and saying, I'm going to build the next Clash of Clans, you're going to compete with one of the market leaders in the market. So probably from the onset, you're doomed to fail. Same if your game is designed for 12 to 14-year-old girls. Your target audience is probably way too small, and it's not going to go anywhere far. In terms of the gameplay, if you have a very simple type of gameplay, and there's no opportunity to expand it, how are you going to keep those users beyond the first 2 or 3 weeks? Are they going to come back? Are you able to make major updates that significantly make the gameplay interesting for a long period of time? And last, well-integrated monetization. All those submissions that we get, at least half of them has not really thought about monetization, or like, well, it might be a premium game, it might be a free-to-play game, we can add some microtransactions here and there. That's not working. If you haven't designed monetization from the start of developing your game, it's probably going to fail. So these are kind of the common sense items when you make your proposal. Make sure that if there's any weaknesses in relation to these issues, you've thought about it well, and you will present a solution or a fix to address that. Similarly, for the gameplay itself, it should be innovative, because the market is saturated with copies. If you're presenting us something that's hot in the market today and say, well, look at all these successful games in the market today, we're asking, well, in 6 months from now, the market's probably changed. Actually, in China, every 3 months, the market changed. So if you're bringing us something that works very well now and that's very popular now, we can almost guarantee you, by the time you bring it to market, it's not going to do well at all. The market trends are moving too rapidly. And even we're seeing that if you apply like AAA IP and you have AAA production values, you cannot create your own space in the market if you do not offer something new. So you have to be creative, and you have to determine what is your unique selling point and put that forward to the investor. Then looking at the team. Team, very important. We take a very deep look. What games have core members worked on in the past? At what companies have they worked on, at? Are they small game companies? Are they AAA developers? Have those companies shipped any successful games? What was your role in the company? Who did you work with? Did you have any successful partners that you learned from? And of course, if you've put the team together, has that team have any experience working together before? Are you a bunch of friends, know each other for a long time? Or is everyone just coming together for this project? Because we can be sure that if 5 random people come together, however good their background, that they're going to be working well together. So all these things matter quite a bit. And if you're lacking a certain experience in your team, you have to make sure you address that before proposing to your potential investor. I actually want to look at some case studies, and these case studies were actually submitted to NetEase at a certain point in time. The first one, the game proposed to us, or the concept, is a free-to-play RPG for iOS and Android. And the list of staff members and their experiences as follows. The CEO was a director at a major tech company. The CTO was a tech lead at a AAA console company. We have a casual mobile game company for the lead developer, premium mobile game title done by client developer before, and casual mobile games by the art director. Now, when we evaluate this, we have to look at 3 things, namely the monetization model, free to play, the genre, which is RPG, and the platform, which is iOS and Android in this case. So if we look in combination with the background of the team, we actually see that the CEO has no game experience whatsoever. Now, that is a big no-no from the outset for most investors. The CTO, no mobile experience. Okay, he's got some experience working for AAA console, but is that the same as mobile? Probably not. We have a genre mismatch for the lead developer. There's no free-to-play experience with the client developer. And same, the art director, also a genre mismatch. So probably this company, just by looking at the background of its team, we're saying, no way. This does not even warrant a further look into this company. And of course, for developers that haven't got much experience, or startups that have recently started out with maybe graduates, it's a different story. You have to look at different factors on what you have done before, or where you're getting the experience, or who else is helping you. But generally, when you make the investments, the background of the team, the experience of the team, is the number one factor that gets you out of that big pile of submissions at large investment companies. Second case study then. This time we have a submission for a free-to-play mobile game for iOS and Android. Now, this CEO has some game experience. It's not in the mobile area, but at least it's at a successful AAA PC game developer. We have another CTO with some experience in the mid-core mobile industry. Both the senior game designer and the senior engineer, they have worked on free-to-play mobile title before, although at a small, not so successful company. The art director again, AAA PC game developer. And also for this one, we see that there's some relevant experience, but there's not a whole lot of success. There's not a whole lot of deep experience that we're seeing that's right for that particular proposal. Even though the CEO's worked at a successful PC game company, he hasn't done mobile before. So is the rest of the team able to back him up when doing mobile? Well, they have some experience, but not too much. So probably this is a borderline case, and we're still not very interested to look further into this company. Then case study number 3. This is a slightly larger team building a free-to-play mid-core mobile title. Now in this case, again, the CEO got game experience, but not in the mobile area. We have the CTO and the CCO all coming from successful large companies, AAA production values, but not on mobile. However, they've got a team that is able to back them up. Because if we look a little bit further down, we've seen that there are 2 people who have multi-platform experience, so they can build that bridge between mobile and PC or console. And we also have some AAA mobile game experience in there. So this team as a whole covers all the bases for the proposal or of the game they wanted to make, namely free-to-play mid-core mobile title. So this studio actually warrants a deeper look, and actually this was a studio that we invested in. So if we've gone past the team itself, we have to validate your business strategy, your marketing strategy. You have a good game or a good proposal. You have a good team with a nice background. How are you going to bring your game to market? Now, we're not looking for you to be experts when we evaluate that. We don't demand that up to the details you have analyzed how this is going to work and your prediction models are perfect. But we want to validate your business logic. We want to see if the way that you envision for your game to get to market works, or in our experience as developers or publishers, if your assumptions are reasonable. So when you consider your marketing strategy, are you going for heavy user acquisition, or is it organic growth? Perhaps you're relying on platform relationships with Google or Apple in case you get some featuring, and when you get the feature, you'll go from there. Or perhaps you're trying influencers from YouTube or the esports method. We want to know how you envision getting the game to market. We'll bring in some expertise as well, but your assumptions should be reasonable and realistic. Similarly for the other business logic, like the target audience, what's it going to be? What social elements do you have both inside the game, how are players going to communicate inside the game, as well as outside the game? Are you going to do active community management? The services and operations, how extensive are they? Are they necessary, or is the game just played by themselves? You have to have a basic thought that you have to present to the potential investor. And finally, of course, conversion and retention. Now, it's very important that you show some projections to a potential investor. Now, again, it doesn't have to be perfect, and we understand that the market is too hard to perfectly predict. But we need to have something ballpark. We want to see that you have looked at similar games, or games with similar gameplay or similar features. You've checked their lifetime value, you've checked their revenue per user, how much daily active users they have, and so you try to kind of predict what your game is going to do. That's obviously another very important part that we want to validate, because as an investor you have experience, you can see whether the assumptions that are made are reasonable as well, and if they match what we're seeing, then probably we can bring in our expertise and optimize your plan. Similarly, the allocation of cash. You're asking for investment. How are you going to use the money? All kinds of things matter, from the user acquisition in later stages to your salary that you're giving to yourself. If you're going to give yourself a big amount of money, then why are we investing in you? seems like you're just there to earn a big salary, nothing more. But the equipment, how big your office is, what operations are costing, any kind of overhead is all relevant. We're going to match that to all the investments we've done before and see if that's reasonable or not. So you have to think this through, and you have to present it in basic form to your potential investor. Finally, the timeline. We want to see that you have an idea that you're going to execute, and you have the confidence to execute it when. When are you going to do that market analysis? When are you going to do your focus group testing? When are you going to start your user acquisition campaign, right at launch or afterwards? Are you looking for investment for building a prototype? Or are you looking for investment to build a feature-complete game? Or is it simply for UA purposes? We want to be regularly updated on the progress that you are making. Keep your investors informed the progress that you're making. That will give them more confidence that you're able to deliver. And this is a very important part in general, that you are able to give your investor confidence that you will deliver on what you are claiming to do. And if you're giving a presentation, maybe initially an investor wants to meet with the head of the company and the number 2 of the company, but eventually it's pretty likely that they will want to meet your whole team. And when they meet your whole team, you want to make sure that everyone has contributed to the discussion, which you can do, by the way, by assigning each member of the team a few parts of your presentation. Because if the investor gets the idea that there are some members of the team that are insignificant or not confident or just don't add any value, they probably think that something is not worth investing in. So you have to make sure that you have every member of your team showing to investors how valuable they are, what their expertise is, and how they contributed to the company. How to find the investors? Well, pretty simple. We're at a game event today. Industry connections, obviously, pretty straightforward. The game shows, we have the VC speed dating, things like that. Other developers, they put their investors on their websites, so you can get the names rather easily. Governments and trade bodies, very effective way, because governments always want foreign companies to invest in their respective country. So they go around trying to find companies that are willing to spend money, and they will have a big list of companies that are looking for investment. And finally, email just work, because just like you, people that want to invest, they have targets, especially at big companies. They want to find studios, they want to talk to studios, so email works. Feel free to send me an email about that as well. Come talk to me after this talk. I hope this gives you a basic idea of what an investor is looking for. Actually, it's a lot of common sense, making sure you cover your bases, making sure you show your investor that you've thought about all those little things, from making the prototype up to making the game long-term successful. Those things matter. Make sure you give the confidence, and you should be able to go a very long way. If you're interested to dive even deeper into the topic of strategics, right after the lunch break at 1 p.m. we'll do a panel about strategic investment. So I invite you there as well. Thanks very much.
Questions?
Quick question, just a fairly simple one. What's your most successful investment so far in a game company? Or what's your most successful title that you've invested in, given, just curious?
The most successful investment that we did was in more on the mobile distribution side in the US. But for a European example, we recently invested 2.5 million in Reforged Studios in Finland. So this is an Asian to Europe investment, and we're expecting a lot from that. But a lot of the investments, they take quite a long time to get to market. And then the question also is, do we want to bring that game over to China, or do we want to keep it in their original market?
Hey, Tom. Sort of building on that, when NetEase invests in a company, how many of those companies are in China and how many are outside of China? And how do you decide what you're going to bring or change from their product to take it from the West back to China?
All right. So we have NetEase Capital, and NetEase Capital is looking outside China virtually all the time. We also invest in some studios in China, although that's much more limited because our company itself is a very large developer. So we usually take minority equity stakes in companies which doesn't make as much sense in China. Most studios are also looking to be acquired completely. So in the past, we have seen that examples, entire teams, 20, 40, 100 people, just being acquired and being a new team at NetEase, essentially. When we move abroad, we like to partake in studios that are also technologically advanced. I think Reforged is a good example of that. We don't necessarily want to influence their game development. We want to see how they progress. We want to offer our expertise. And then once we get to a feature complete build, at that stage we can say, well, what is the right way to potentially bring this game to the East? Does NetEase want to do it itself? Because we don't demand by default that we publish the game in China. But that might be an option, and in that case, we probably take the game and we continue development with Chinese teams in China.
Yeah, speaking of technology, before you talked about two factors which motivate you to invest: a good team, a good game. When is great, unique technology ever a factor in your acquisitions, and how does that pan out? How do you do due diligence and these kinds of things?
Well, if you have good technology, that's one thing. The big question is, are you able to apply it to something that's practical and creates value? So we look at certain investments, and technology is one of the aspects that a game company would put forward. So we would evaluate whether their specific technology is applied to their proposal well, like they are building a game with it that does well, and whether that technology potentially cannot be copied, essentially. We do a lot of technological development in China. If we think that this technology is something new that we couldn't develop ourselves in, say, 3 to 6 months, that is a good benchmark for us to say, okay, this seems like something hard to copy, essentially. But if we see the technology and it's just an improvement on an existing concept, in all fairness, we can copy that in China very quickly.
Tom,
does that answer your question? Okay, thank you.
One question as well from me. There's a lot of questions around the potential exits of companies that have strategic investors. So, for example, if a company could potentially exit to one of your competitors if they have investments from you, or are there specific things that you make sure happen to keep that from happening when you do invest?
Well, from a strategy perspective, the first consideration is we're a Chinese company, and we are trying to move west, and at the same time we want to maintain our position in the market, which is right now on top. So obviously there's a natural competitor to us in the market by the name of Tencent. They do a lot of investment around the world too. So for us, one consideration is staying on par with them, like making sure that we have our interests and they have their other interests. But once, as you say, there is a possibility of an exit or our competitors are stepping in, I think that would compel us to make sure nobody else can get a piece of the pie. Especially relating to the Chinese market. It's not like, for example, the Finnish industry where everyone happily shares with each other. Chinese market is very competitive. People don't want to share any type of knowledge, and if people can get away with taking something away from you, they will. So we would be very vigilant to make sure that our investments are protected and not taken over by competitive force.
Tom, I just enjoyed your talk. I just had something to add and then sort of a question for you. So I'm James Costa. I'm with Signia Venture Partners. We're a Silicon Valley-based investment firm. We invested in Fun Plus and Super Evil Megacorp is probably our most successful to date with Vainglory. But what's interesting is we get approached with a lot of games and developers who, because we're just a venture fund, we don't provide any value add, right? Any value added capital other than introductions. How important would you say it is for game developers to do their homework and really understand who it is that they're approaching and the services that can be provided in addition to capital with a company like NetEase?
Well, as I said during the talk, you have to have a basic idea of how you want to run your own product. I think it's very important that when you're building your product, and you obviously believe in it, that you have thought of your strategy on how to bring it to market and not rely on someone else to come in and say, well, I think this is the best way to go. I would say you have to validate your thoughts, and they can be steered towards. So when we do investments, we want to see that you've thought about it, and we validate it. But in the end, we can still contribute more value. So a lot of the investments that we have done, they are based on the fact that NetEase can, for example, provide free-to-play expertise. There are also a lot of investment proposals that say, well, we have a premium game, we want to convert it to free-to-play. That is much harder because the base of the original does not match what they want to move towards at all. But I say it's extremely important that people do their homework, get a basic idea, and then they can bring in outside expertise to fine-tune that idea as opposed to giving the whole concept or base how to do it.
Thank you so much. I think we're actually out of time.
Okay.
I want to thank Tom for a terrific presentation. Everyone, we're going to take about an hour lunch break, and we're going to resume. Thanks again, and we'll see you in an hour.
Okay, thank you.